If there's something that you want to become in your life, something that you want to have in your life, something that you want to do, there's really only one way to do or be or to have that thing. And that is to actually do, be, or have that thing in your mind before you do it in reality. In this episode, I want to share with you an unbelievably powerful and deep 3-word expression that my own coach, Greg, who you've met in previous episodes, talks about a lot, and how I have cycled through thinking about this over and over and over again, and why I encourage you to do the same thing. So let's cue up the theme song. We'll jump right in to this critical mindset way of thinking.
Welcome to Racking Up Rentals, a show about how regular people, those of us without huge war chests of capital or insider connections, can build lasting wealth acquiring a portfolio of buy and hold real estate. But we don't just go mainstream looking at what's on the market and asking banks for loans, nor are we posting "we buy houses" signs or just looking for, quote, motivated sellers to make lowball offers to. You see, we are people-oriented deal makers. We sit down directly with sellers to work out win-win deals without agents or any other obstacles, and buy properties nobody else even knows are for sale. I'm Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur. If you're the kind of real estate investor who wants long-term wealth, not get-rich-quick gimmicks or pictures of yourself holding fat checks on social media, this show is for you. Join me and quietly become the wealthiest person on your block. Now let's go rack up a rental portfolio.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of Racking Up Rentals. Show notes for this episode are at thoughtfulre.com/E114. Please do us a big favor by hitting the subscribe button in your podcast app. It really makes a big difference in letting the platforms know that you are listening so that they want to share this podcast with other fellow thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs who need to hear this message just like you. Onward with today's episode. And in today's episode, I'm really excited to just do a little deep dive into 3 powerful words. Now, these powerful words are what we like to call Pinneoisms. So this is from my personal coach and mentor who you met in episode 100, Greg Pinneo. 3 powerful words, and this is in a collection of things we would call Pinneoisms, but this one is just something I think about a lot. And the 3 words are this: arrival before departure. In this episode, I want to just dig into what this really means, and I want to tell you how I apply this in my own life and in my own business. So arrival before departure. Well, what does that mean? Well, Greg also provides kind of a little sub-headline, maybe you'd call it a little tagline that goes along with it. Arrival before departure. You have to be there before you're there in order to get there. Wow. So let's just stop and think that. You have to be there in your mind before you're there in reality in order for you to have the ability to ever get there in reality. In other words, you have to be able to see it in your mind as something you've already accomplished before you've accomplished it in order to actually ever develop the traits and have the ability to actually get there yourself. Now, this idea is so simple. I mean, arrival before departure is literally 3 words, but it's so profound. And I feel like this is one of a great example of one of those things you come across that's like endlessly deep. You know, you can never stop thinking about this. You can never hit the finish line where you're like, well, yep, I've got it. There's always more and more to it. It's like looking down into a well. You're like, oh, that well's about 10 feet deep. No, the well's infinitely deep. It's at least 1,000 feet, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's something I revisit myself all of the time. So this idea of arrival before departure, you have to be there before you're there in order to get there, is connected to and has its roots in other things that you may have heard of or read about or thought about. It's related in many ways to the idea of manifestation, right? It's related to the ideas from Think and Grow Rich, that thoughts are things and that you become what you think about. It's related to the Secret, that book, that film, the documentary, all of those types of ideas. But it's not just a kind of woo-woo, touchy-feely metaphysical concept. it has some very practical and sort of, I would say, tangible types of elements to it as well. And so here's my take on it. Here, if I was going to like paraphrase it myself, I would say that you have to be able to see yourself as the person capable of accomplishing something before you can ever actually accomplish that thing, right? If you want to accomplish something, but you don't actually believe you are the person capable of it, you're never going to be able to accomplish that. So if you can, in your mind, start to see yourself as the person who is capable of accomplishing that goal, then that is what really, really matters. Like, I'll give you a very unbelievably personal example for me. I am always self-conscious about my sort of overall level of fitness. If I said I'm setting a goal to run a marathon, I, at this exact moment, do not see myself as the person who's capable of doing that. So if I were to set that as a goal, the very first thing I would need to do was start imagining the version of Jeff who is the person who's capable of doing something along those lines. So when you have already been somewhere in your mind, it will feel way more familiar and totally normal to you when you get there in reality. And that is the value of thinking about arrival before departure. You have to be there before you're there in order to get there. So I have used this myself, I would say, in kind of three levels, three different types of ways that I have applied this. And I just wanted to share some examples from my own life about that, because I think you might be able to relate to some of these too. So I'm going to give you three sort of categories. One would be like really big picture. This is life level stuff. Number two would be sort of medium level goals, like here's something specific I'm trying to accomplish in the not too distant future. And then number three would be something very tactical, very specific, very event kind of driven. Okay, so let's start at the top. Let's start with category number one. These are the big picture. This is like life level kind of stuff. And I would say that the verb here is be. This is stuff these are things that I want to be, a person I want to become. It's not stuff I want to have or do, but it's what I want to be. So let me tell you very transparently, I personally want to be somebody who has illuminated a path of entrepreneurship in real estate for millions of people. I want to help shine a light on this path and say, look at this path. This is available to you. Let me show you how you can walk down it for millions of people. And I'm not there yet. I am not that person yet, and that's okay. But what does that look like? And what I have to do is literally visualize what it looks like if I am being that person. How would I dress? How would I talk to people? Who do I hang out with in those cases? Where do I find myself? Like, if I am being that person, what am I doing on a daily basis? What am I doing when I'm really being that person? Is it standing on a stage talking to 10,000 people in an arena? Is it being an episode podcast guest on a massive podcast? Is it publishing my first book and having a book signing at a bookstore? I don't know, but I have to visualize what it looks like when I am being that person. And if I can conjure up those images in my mind, I can focus on those images. I'm already there in my mind, so that when I get there, it's going to feel totally natural, totally normal, because I've already seen myself as the person who's capable of being that guy who has illuminated a path of entrepreneurship and real estate for millions of people. The second category is, if the first category was 100,000 foot kind of B level life goals, like this is who I want to be, the second category would be more like medium level goals. What do I want to accomplish in the next couple years? And so if the first one was B, I would say maybe we'd put the label of have on this one. What do I want to have? What do I want to have accomplished, to have acquired, to actually have my hands on? So one example from my real life is that my wife and I, we really want to get an Airstream trailer, and we want to get an awesome tow vehicle. And we want to spend some of our time traveling around the country, not moving all the time, but being what we would call temporary local. So there are certain types of towns, certain sort of vibes, maybe you'd say, in certain types of towns, like Bend, Oregon, where we live, or Park City, Utah, or Whitefish, Montana. I'm sure lots of places in Colorado. We want to go and be temporary locals in those places. Maybe we show up in our Airstream. We act as temporary locals, like we live there out of an Airstream for 2-3 weeks, and then move on and check out another one. So that's a dream that we have. We want to accomplish that in the next couple years. So what am I doing? Well, I'm visualizing it, but I'm visualizing two things, okay? I'm visualizing being in that situation, right? I'm visualizing what it's like to wake up in that Airstream and what it's like to step into that Toyota Tundra 4-door with an awesome canopy. And I'm visualizing walking around Park City, Utah. But I'm also visualizing what I need to do to create it. So I'm getting a little more tactical here, right? So I think roughly this is going to cost, we're probably going to get like a late model used Airstream, probably a late model used truck, roughly about $100,000. So I'm asking myself, okay, well, where's the $100,000 going to come from? And I'm thinking, here's how I plan to do that. I would like to buy something like a fourplex that has opportunity for value add. I want to execute my plan to add that value, and then using the principles of supercharged seller financing and just what I do and teach all the time, extract some of the equity that I create from that fourplex, right? So maybe I buy the fourplex for, in my market, that might be $700,000. I improve it. Now it's worth $850,000, and I extract $100,000 of that $150,000 that I just created in equity, using the principles and the tools that I use all the time in my normal business anyway. And that gives me $100,000 of liquid cash that I can work with to buy this truck and this Airstream. So I'm visualizing the process of buying the fourplex too. I'm not just visualizing being in the trailer. I'm visualizing sitting in that living room, negotiating that fourplex, improving that fourplex physically, managerially, placing the additional debt on the property to extract some of that equity, so that, and then seeing the wire come into my account for the $100,000 that I need to do this. So that is part of my arrival before departure as well. I am arriving through this whole, basically a burr with this fourplex. I'm arriving before I'm departing on it. I'm arriving in the Airstream in Whitefish, Montana before I've departed. And then the third and final category, if we're getting more and more tactical, is really something more like an event. Now, I would say if the first category, the big picture level, was who do you want to be? And what I just explained with the Airstream was what do you want to have? I'm thinking about this also like, what do you want to do? So here's an example from my personal life. About 2 weeks ago, I started a program called 75 Hard, which is 75 days of a very strict kind of protocol that is a mental toughness challenge, but it has lots of physical components as well. So I'm about 13 days now into 75-day program. So I am visualizing like the last day of that program. I've got a little notepad that sits next to my nightstand where I cross off all the things that I have to do each day. It's like drink a gallon of water, work out twice, read 10 pages of a book. And so I've got all these categories, and I literally cross them off as I do them. And I'm visualizing crossing off the 75th line of the page where I have just completed everything for the 75th time. I'm visualizing what that's like, and I'm visualizing what it will feel like to actually cross it off. What will it feel like when I do that, and the pride or the sense of gratification and the satisfaction in having stuck with something through that, or the physical maybe transformation of the improved fitness that I have achieved during that. How will it feel at that point? It's been said, and I've heard stories anecdotally about athletes, like they said, Michael Jordan and his visualizes shooting 1,000 free throws, so that when he goes to actually shoot free throws, he's already done it 1,000 times that day by itself, and it's a swish every single time. So that manifests itself into reality. They said that Michael Phelps has got a an amazing routine for picturing the perfect race in his mind before he ever gets in the pool. It's like a movie he's already watched in his mind a freaking million times. And so when he gets in the pool, he's just executing what he's already seen in the movie so many times. And I believe that there's a lot of truth in that. There was a property that I was doing a flip on a few years ago, and it was the highest end flip that I had ever done, and all numbers are relative, but I was trying to sell this property for about $800,000, which in my town, in my market, in my life, my business was a lot of money. And we put it on the market, and it was kind of like only going okay. And I started to feel concerned about it, and we had to adjust the price. But at one point, I started doing a daily visualization of me walking into my escrow officer's office, an office I've been in so many times, you could blindfold me and I could manage my way in there. But I pictured myself giving her a hug like I normally would, sitting down at her desk, talking about what we'd been doing recently, which restaurant we'd been to recently, other fun activities. And then I imagined her putting the first piece of paper in front of me and handing me the pen and me signing on the closing documents for the sale of this property. And of course, after a while, I found myself, I got the offer, we accepted it, we got through the due diligence period, and I found myself in that exact spot doing that exact thing, closing on the sale of that property, but I had already been there in my mind. And so when I got there in real life and in person, it was totally, totally familiar. So my encouragement to you is this: as you think about what you want to do, whether it's tomorrow, what you want to have, whether it's in the next year to 2 years, who you want to be in the bigger picture of your life, visualize it frequently. And I would say don't just visualize it, but try to feel it physiologically in your body. Like if you're about to take a vacation, the day before the vacation or when you're on the way to the airport, you actually, if you're anything like me, you might have like a physical sense of excitement in your belly, right? There's like a tingling. You're like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. If you can become the person who can actually conjure up that feeling of excitement and satisfaction physically into your body, that will actually also really go along fantastically with the images in your mind about what you are trying to accomplish. So personally, that's what I work on too. I try to not just visualize being there, but I visualize how I try to physically visualize, I guess, if you could say it that way. I try to conjure up the actual feelings in my body about how it's going to feel to be there. And all of those things help a tremendous amount. So, my friends, arrival before departure, one of the greatest of the many great Pinneoisms, in my opinion. You have to be there before you're there in order to get there. And that's it for today's episode of Racking Up Rentals. So again, show notes are at thoughtfulre.com/E114. Please do us a big favor by hitting the subscribe button in your podcast app and take a second to rate and review the show. Did you know that we have a Facebook group for thoughtful real estate entrepreneurs also? It's called Rental Portfolio Wealth Builders, and we would love to have you join us there. Just go to group.thoughtfulre.com and you'll be redirected right there. If you liked this episode, please take a screenshot of it and post it to Instagram. Tag us. We are at Thoughtful Real Estate. I'll catch you in the next episode. Until then, this is Jeff from the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur signing off.
Thanks for listening to Racking Up Rentals, where we build long-term wealth by being win-win deal makers. Remember, solve the person to unlock the deal and solve the financing to unlock the profits.